Get your release.
With Shrinked, the anonymous armchair chat show.
How's everyone doing? Welcome to what we call Shrinked. And here in this program, we reach out to the global community where everyday folks can share their voices and say on a national and international platform what's really going on in their minds and their hearts, and also share their feelings, concerns, challenges, whatever it is. This is that show where we can all get that release that we need every now and then. I'm your host, Jamal Aziz, or TJ, with BJ psychotherapist, Mr. Liu. How's it going, man?
How's it going? I'm great.
Awesome. And today, I feel like today's subject doesn't necessarily require psychological intervention, but if not aware of this mindset or habit, or what some would call a natural instinctive behavior, it could possibly get out of control and, well, consistently derail some very important relationships in life. So both of us thought that this was a feeling or emotion that definitely warrants a discussion on the show. And most of us have experienced it at some point in our lives, whether from a romantic partner or from, some external source. And we've most likely have felt it within ourselves for other people. And of course, I'm talking about none other than jealousy.
Right. I have to agree that jealousy is extremely common. And I think it's quite safe to say that everyone, I do mean everyone, experiences it. And it's not a pleasant feeling. However, just because you feel jealousy doesn't mean that you are a bad person. And also, just because you are feeling jealous now doesn't mean that you will get stuck in this feeling forever.
Right.
So I think we're going to unpack all of that in today's program.
Hopefully we can. I mean, this is a really big topic, but we'll just try to make sure that we hit, at least the essence of this thing anyway.
Right.
So if you're new to the program, we advocate that mental health awareness is huge for our adaptation, evolution, and ultimately our survival in this ever-changing world. So joining us on the show, we have a couple of practicing professionals in the world of psychology, including Mr. Liu, who will be giving some pointers to those who share their voices. And we hope that some of that advice will reach some of you out there listening if you're dealing with similar issues. And this is also a good time to highlight that this show is not a substitute for seeing a licensed professional. If anyone listening is in need of psychological assistance, we encourage you to please reach out to someone near you that can assess you based on your individual need. So now, with no further ado, let's hear from our voice sharer. And just an FYI, some of the names on the program will be pseudonyms for privacy concerns. So let's hear it.
Hey guys, my name is Viola, currently 27 years old. I've been somewhat depressed and lost lately. So what happened is, I went to Canada for uni like 8 years ago, and I met my boyfriend there. But after we graduated, he really didn't like it there and came back to China first. So I stayed there for like 3 more years to get my permanent residency. And we've been in a relationship for 5 years and long distance for like around 3 years. So, I was in Toronto. My boyfriend started a business doing video production. And he told me that he had a partner, but didn't really tell me any details about it. It's a startup, and they only had like 2 part-time employees. So there's a lot of cases that he and his partner stayed all night at the company alone, like until the next morning or like even later. I didn't really think about it much because in my head I just assumed that his partner is a guy for some reason. Then around 3 months ago I came back, and after my quarantine they work all night again. So I bought breakfast and I went to his company to visit, and that's when I realized his partner is actually a girl, and she's around the same age as me. So he introduced me as his girlfriend, and we started talking. That girl was being pretty rude, I would say, to me. So after that, I was really mad at my boyfriend because he never told me that his partner is a girl, and they spend nights and nights together, while half world away from him. So what he's telling me is that he's just treating her as a partner, so he didn't think about it that much. And he's afraid that I'm gonna feel insecure since I'm so far away, so he didn't tell me about it. Also, another reason he didn't want me to see her at first is he knows that his partner's personality is not that good, and he doesn't want us to have any conflicts. So in the past 3 months, I got some chances to know about how they work, and I do trust that my boyfriend that there's nothing in between them. And sometimes they don't really get along with each other as well. But I'm just being really jealous that they spend so much time together while I'm so far away and being alone. And whenever I see her text or call him, it triggers me a lot. And I really hate the feelings that there's nothing I can do about it. The video production is not my specialty, and I know for a fact that I cannot replace her, and he needs her to keep the business going. I don't really know what to do about it, and I think I really need some advice from you guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Viola, for sharing something that's such a real feeling that I have experienced in my personal life. And it kind of brings me back to my initial days of dating. And I feel that during that time, I had this compulsive feeling that I wanted to know everything that my partner was doing, who she was doing it with, and, these phone calls, especially from, people from the opposite gender. It just made me feel really, really uncomfortable. So I can kind of understand this sentiment of just this jealousy that just creeps up in you, and it's hard to control. And I didn't believe at that time. I rejected the notion of platonic relations, which is kind of funny because I had one. Mm-hmm. I had a friend that was a female, and we had this kind of relationship. But for my girlfriend at the time, it was just really, really tough for me to accept. And I'm glad I kind of evolved out of that a little bit, but it was it's a tough evolution. It's tough to kind of get out of that mindset. And it's not just with romantic relations. I think that in terms of sports, when you want to get the coach's approval and things of this nature, you may work a little bit harder, and you may feel a little bit of resentment towards the guys that are maybe doing a little bit better than you. Maybe the coach pats this guy on the back a little bit more.
Yeah, more approval.
Yeah, mm-hmm. So it's certainly something that's not, diminished to only romantic relations. And according to the traditional evolutionary psychological model, jealousy, and this is according to this model, jealousy is an inherited response that once increased our chances of survival. And I feel like I see this play out in everyday life. And I'll give you an example. At work, sometimes you have individuals who spend a lot of time being a liaison for some of the bosses or the supervisors. And so I guess when there's any big decisions that are made, they're notified and they have this sense of power. But then someone new comes along and kind of captures that interest. And this could be cataclysmic in that situation. Sometimes this person will do anything to sabotage or gossip about this person to, ruin their, their standing with the leaders. And so you see this at work. And also in school, with teachers' pets, sometimes we call them teachers' pets. But sometimes, if the teacher gives a little bit more affection to one student, the person who scores the highest or whatever, other people get a little bit jealous. And so that's why sometimes these kids are bullied because of that jealousy. And a sibling rivalry, you name it. But I guess the dating world there's just a lot more research, the most abrupt form that we experience jealousy. And according to this model now, men, it has been argued that they exhibit jealousy primarily in response to sexual threats to their relationship. And the alleged reason for this is that our male ancestors could be sure that they were actual fathers of the children they provided for. Therefore, they can guarantee that their DNA was being passed on. And on the other side of the spectrum for women, they exhibit jealousy primarily in response to the emotional threats to the relationship. And the reason for that was, according to this model, is that only females who had someone to provide food for their children, their children would survive. And also, of course, their DNA would be passed on as well. So this eventually gave rise to the notion that men had a sex jealousy gene and women had an emotional jealousy gene, I find that to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I have heard of that model quite a few times before, and I have to say it does provide a very interesting angle. But at the same time, as usual, it sounds very stereotypical. Like men focuses on passing on their genes, so they're all about aggression. And sometimes the jealousy could give rise to violent behavior and stuff.
Right.
Whereas women are more like nurturing, so they pay more attention to emotional issues.
And I know some women that would lose their top if you were unfaithful in a sexual way.
Right.
Yeah, they wouldn't just be like, oh, did you have an emotional connection? Oh, if you did, then I have a problem. But if not, then it's okay. And that hasn't worked in my world, at least.
Yeah, sure. So my point is, that evolutionary model certainly sounds very intriguing.
Yeah.
However, I don't think it fully provides the picture here.
Right.
What I mean by that is, because jealousy exists everywhere, like you mentioned, it is very much apparent in sibling relationships. And also when it comes to sports, there's jealousy and you want that kind of approval from your authority figure or whatever.
Right.
So it doesn't just apply to romantic or male-female romantic relationships. So I think if you just talk about the evolutionary model, it doesn't provide the full picture. What I find more relevant here is the endowment effect. So that endowment effect basically means we human beings tend to attach more value to the stuff that we do own than if the stuff is something we didn't own. So in this case, if you have a partner, and because that partner, in essence, already belongs to you, of course, quote unquote, already belongs to you.
Right.
So you feel that there's more value attached to that person. So if somebody else is going to come in here and take that person away from you, that pain is much more obvious than if you, let's say, find somebody else and get into a new relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Jealousy also has had a bad rap for a long time, but I almost feel that some of it, okay, not I don't want to say being a jealous person is a good thing. I've also heard it communicated that jealousy is good because it shows that there's concern, that there's love. And it's hard for me to argue against that because I do feel that this feeling comes from something. I mean, if someone that you care for there's a threat of this person going off with someone else, and even sometimes with siblings, if a brother sees his sister talking to someone that he doesn't approve of, I mean, I guess there's a little bit of jealousy here because this between the siblings, the relationship is quite close. And then now that attention and affection could be diverted to someone else. And so there could be this kind of jealousy from that. And if you don't have any jealousy at all, doesn't that indicate possibly that you're just not concerned or you don't care? So I think for most people, if they were to have one or the other, where they were with someone who just absolutely had no interest or didn't care about what they did, and then had someone who was very concerned about what they did and where they went, they would probably choose the latter because it shows some kind of concern. And I don't know if that's healthy or unhealthy, but it seems that a lot of people kind of share this notion.
Yeah, in essence, I definitely agree with you. But I think it really comes down to how you define healthy and unhealthy. And in psychology, I believe there's basically two major schools or approaches to this jealousy issue.
Yeah.
One thinks that, jealousy is just universally bad. It's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because if you have this jealousy feeling towards somebody, that means you don't want good things to happen to that person. And in essence, you're saying, I'm jealous of you because you have something that I don't have, but I don't want you to have it. So I wish that, maybe some bad luck will fall upon you and you will lose it.
So
And
we'll
then
both-
I will
we'll
be
both-
happy. Yeah.
Yeah,
If
that's-
I can't have it, you can't have it. Nobody can have it. So that's why it's universally bad.
Yeah.
But then there's also the other school, which proposes that there's the healthy kind of jealousy and then there's the unhealthy kind of jealousy. The healthy kind of jealousy basically is similar to envy. So once again, I am jealous of you because you have something that I don't have, but I am willing to work much harder so that maybe I can also have what you have, or maybe I can reach your level someday or even surpass you. So in that essence, this jealousy becomes kind of motivation to push you forward, to make you become a better person. So that's the healthy kind of jealousy.
Okay.
But then again, some people will say this is not jealousy, this is envy. So it really comes down to how you define jealousy.
Earlier, we spoke on just how big the subject of jealousy is, and it's just that a lot of people even debate whether it's natural or unnatural. I was reading an article in Psychology Today, and they mentioned how in polyamorous relationships, these people tend to hold the idea that jealousy is not something that's natural, it's something that's learned, it's been instilled in us culturally. But on the other hand, for people in monogamous relationships, they hold that it's something that is so, the pervasiveness of jealousy is an indicator that it's something that's quite natural. And I'm not really sure which way I feel about that. I do know that other forms of life, when I mean animals, they share some type of jealousy, and I've had a few pets that exhibited that jealousy towards other pets or other people. So I kind of feel like it's a natural response. But again, it's just it can be debatable.
Yeah, I can definitely see merits from both sides as well. Because interesting, you mentioned polyamorous relationships. There's this concept that's been very popular in recent years. It's called throuple. Basically, that means 3 people in a couple kind of relationship. So the inevitable question here is, will one of them feel jealous? But then again, I have seen with concrete evidence that some people are just happy with everyone in this throuple. So obviously, no one feels jealousy towards anybody in this particular triangle. So that, in effect, shows that it is possible that you can exist in such relationships without feeling jealous. So that's why I can see the merit from the polyamorous relationship angle. But then, according to my own experience, and also most people I know, I think it's very natural because I have yet to see anyone who will just be very happy to see their significant other flirt with somebody else and act like, oh, this is nothing. I'm happy for you. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. I have never seen anyone like that.
Yeah, and in the case with Viola, in her particular case, just the notion of her partner being with possibly a girl around the same age. She didn't go into a lot of the details on how, nice she looked, but just the fact that her partner being around another woman is uncomfortable. And I think that this is really, really natural. And understanding jealousy it's good to at least understand the reasonings behind it. And according to Psychology Today, some of the top reasons is sense of inadequacy, which is generally internal, something that you feel on the inside. And then also there's insecurity, which is mainly external, like there's a threat that you feel is going to take something from you. And then there's possessiveness, entitlement. And I think entitlement and possessiveness is probably related. And then, of course, paranoia is also another big one. And I think that these can potentially be detrimental to, the health of yourself and the person that you're dating if it's not checked and if it's not assessed and if there's not some kind of intervention. If you start to feel paranoia, I think it could be a little bit, you're imagining things, rational and irrational things that could or may not even be happening. And if you're far away, like in the case for Viola, it could be, you could, if you have these kinds of thoughts, it could just drive you to be very emotional.
Well, I think personally, in Viola's case, I wouldn't say paranoia is part of the equation because unless she thinks about the situation nonstop, even to the point that she cannot go to sleep because every time she closes her eyes, maybe an image of her boyfriend and her boyfriend's partner together doing stuff will come up. Maybe that will be reaching the point of paranoia. So if that's not happening, I don't think paranoia is applicable here.
Right.
However, I do think the 2 I words you mentioned previously.
Yeah.
Very much apply here. One of them is insecurity. The other one is inadequacy. Because she herself mentioned that she doesn't know anything about video production, and because her boyfriend's business kind of needs that girl's input or contribution. So she feels like there's no way she could do anything about the situation.
Right.
And that's where the inadequacy feeling and also insecure feeling comes in.
And I think that's kind of tough because sometimes these feelings of inadequacy or insecurity can be kind of instilled in us from, well, external places, where sometimes if we have family members, for example, who teach you not to really trust people for whatever reason. Maybe they've had some bad situations in their line of work or in love. If the marriage, for example, in the child's life, their parents, it didn't quite work out. You may grow up with this idea that, people are not to be trusted for whatever reason. So if you don't have trust, then it's really hard then you're going to have this feeling of insecurity when you are in a situation where you need to trust someone, which in a relationship you kind of have to. And when it's not there, then of course you're going to have these problems. And so I think possibly identifying where that feeling comes from is kind of crucial in this situation as well.
But I do want to make one point very clear, because earlier you mentioned natural versus unnatural.
Yeah.
As a psychotherapist, of course, I encourage all my clients to pay attention to their feelings and emotions and never repress them or try to just stay away from them. I think this is very important because obviously all the emotions, all the feelings are there for a reason. They are there to serve a purpose. So if you're just curious enough, try to be an emotional scientist instead of an emotional judge.
Reactivist.
Then I think it will be much better for you because you can at least try to get to the bottom of things. Like, why do I feel this overwhelming sense of jealousy? Whereas if another person is put in this situation, maybe she will not feel as jealous as I am feeling now. So if that's the case, try to get to the bottom of things. And during this process of uncovering the fact or the fact behind this situation, maybe you can get to know yourself better. So that's always a good thing.
Yes, these experiences, and I've said it before, and I don't feel like things just happen to you. I think that things happen for you, and that's for a reason, for us to understand ourselves more. Because these are our emotions are kind of signals that tell us certain things, and a lot of times they're healthy, but sometimes they can be flawed, and it's just kind of figuring out why you feel a certain way to kind of help us to, I guess, heal if it's necessary, but also to kind of figure out, I guess, finding the source of that negativity. And I think that's kind of important. Sometimes we learn it from friends. If we have a really good friend who had a bad situation, maybe you might harbor that and think that, oh, that could possibly happen to me. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes parents, maybe even a sibling or something. So sometimes other people's experiences can cloud our judgment about what's happening in our personal lives as well.
And also, personally, I think one of the biggest struggling points for anyone who is feeling jealousy is that sometimes we tend to equate that feeling with the feeling that I'm a bad person. Because if I am a decent person, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I just want to remind Viola that don't be too hard on yourself, because obviously you attach so much importance to this particular relationship. And the very fact that you guys are still together and just seeing him with a female work partner can stir so much emotions within you. Maybe that's a good sign. At least that shows very much that you care.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that. Do you care or do you not care?
So we were able to reach out to another professional to share some advice. Joining us today is Thomas Markersen, who is a certified clinical psychologist, and he's working out of Copenhagen, Denmark. So we're very grateful to have him on the show. So let's hear what he has to say.
Dear Viola, let's start by looking at your situation from what we know from surveys and psychology. To begin with, long-distance relationships are difficult, and jealousy is actually the main issue. So in that sense, you're perfectly normal. Also, when couples decide to get geographically close together again after having been in a long-distance relationship, as many as 1 in 3 couples break up. So there is actually this transitional phase that you, by the sound of it, have survived. You are with him still after 3 months, so I think that we can conclude that you have passed the test. So congratulations. Then you tell this rather dramatic story about you showing up at his work and discovering that his partner is actually a woman your age and that they have spent nights together at the office. And obviously that must have been a shock for you. You have decided not to worry about this woman, but whether or not he has had an affair with her, you still are left with a feeling of having been betrayed. And the question becomes, what do you do with a feeling like that? Because that's a very strong feeling. And is actually strong enough to cause some sort of depression, and those kind of feelings can last and linger on for like 1 year or 1.5 years. So it actually becomes a question of what to do with that feeling of having been betrayed. And you also mentioned being depressed. And fortunately, I think that there may be a solution that actually addresses both the feelings of betrayal and insecurity and this depressed feeling. I think that you will suffer from some sort of loneliness. I also surmise this because you've been in Canada for some years, and I know that close friendships, they can suffer when we move around the world. So I have this suspicion that you may be lonely, and this is accentuated by the fact that if your boyfriend is your primary close relationship and you have problems with him, then you may feel really lonely. So I will suggest that you remove your focus from trying to analyze your relationship and focus 100% on building up strong friendships with great women that you can talk about all these things with. In that way, you can create a laboratory in which you can get a reality check on your feelings, emotions, thoughts, and ideas about yourself and your relationship and your future.
And we'd like to thank Thomas for contributing and sharing his advice. Long distance is really tough. It hasn't worked for me. I've got quite a bit of experience with the long distance thing, nationally, internationally, and I mean, it works for a while, okay? But some form of reconciliation or a plan of some sort needs to happen. Otherwise, the two people can just get emotionally exhausted. And I'm speaking from personal experience. It's really, really tough. I mean, there's just so many thoughts that swirl around in your mind. And a lot of it is based out of loneliness. But I mean, there's a lot of other things too, your insecurities, and questions like, is he or she getting affection, when I'm not around from someone else? And, am I the only one that's feeling like this sadness? And, shouldn't, they be feeling as bad as me? And, should I be going out to meet other people? I mean, they certainly are. So should I be doing the same thing? Will they even care if I do that? And, will it stop them from going out and hang out with other people? And so all of these thoughts are just like swirling around, and you're trying to figure out if it's these emotions are positive, are they negative? And yes, you do kind of incriminate yourself. Like, I don't think I should be, feeling these feelings, but you do. And it's just really hard because, again, you're far away, and when someone is smiling and they're happy and you're on the other side of whatever it is, the email or the phone, and you're just miserable, then you kind of, and if you hear someone's voice in the background, that's, like a male or, and as a guy, if I hear that my partner, there's a guy in the background, and it's like, wait a minute, who's that? What's going on? And you just, again, it can be really, really challenging. So carving out a date, I think, is essential for people. And this is from my personal experience. If you can carve out a date when you two are definitely going to meet and be together, this could be really, really important. And if for some reason this is not a possibility and it just keeps getting cryptic as time goes on, that may actually be by design. And again, I've been on the other side of that fence too, because I just didn't feel maybe that this person was it. But neither of us were strong enough to come out and just say it, you know what, maybe we should just call this thing off. But so we just kind of it's kind of like a masquerade for a while, but eventually things end up working itself out or not.
Yeah. I just have to say, I really appreciate your vivid description there, TJ, because what you said reminds me of that saying. You know, people always say love is the greatest thing in the world because that's such a great feeling. When you're in love, you're on cloud nine, right?
Yes.
But then also at the same time, love is such a torturous feeling because it can give you hell as well.
That's right.
So that's where jealousy comes in, because when jealousy comes in, you almost feel like you cannot control yourself. You can only focus on the negative stuff, and you can never stop your mind from going into dark places. So that's all very human. Once again, I just want to remind everyone, and Viola included, when you're feeling these dark thoughts, just cut yourself some slack because you are just being human. That's as natural as it gets. However, back to Thomas's advice, I think it's very interesting he mentioned that study, because I have also heard of that study quite a few times. And it's indeed true that long-distance relationships, or the couples in such relationships, they tend to break up more after they are back physically together rather than when they are actually physically apart. So I think the very fact that, after more than 3 months, that they're back together and they're still a couple, at the very least, that's a very good sign. So I would suggest that maybe Viola could shift her angle a little bit. So instead of focusing on, oh, how can he be doing this to me? He has betrayed my trust. Maybe turn to the angle, hey, we're still together. I still care about this relationship so much. Just the fact that, he is working with a female coworker makes me so jealous. So that means I care. So that's always a good sign. So maybe try to focus on this. However, that said, I do know that if you just keep a positive attitude, that's not going to cut it.
No, not always.
Yeah. So we do have some actionable tips here. My number one tip is try to avoid triggers. We all know what triggers us, right? So in Viola's case, obviously going to her boyfriend's office and seeing them, interact with each other, that's a major trigger. So maybe just try to steer clear of that. Even if your mind is telling you, I should check on him, I should see what they're doing. No, do not do that. Avoid triggers. You're not avoiding triggers to give your boyfriend an easier time. You're avoiding triggers to give yourself an easier time. Always remember that.
And I also feel like people have to understand that you can't control people no matter what you do.
Exactly.
And that you have to also feel that if this person wants to go off with someone else, then there's really, you kind of have to allow that to happen. And that's hard. That's really hard to do. But obviously trying to control whatever it is, it consumes so much energy, and it actually makes you harder to deal with. Because if you go that route where you try to micromanage everything this person does, the relationship won't work, and you may carry that into the next relationship, which also will, and again, this will be kind of like a vicious cycle. So it's almost like you have to kind of let this person trust that they're going to be who they are and just not try to encroach on it so much, because in the end, you can't do anything about it anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And here comes the second actionable tip. I would say it sounds like cliche, but it's very true. Work on yourself. Make yourself better, make yourself more appealing. Now, I don't mean that in the sense, I should make myself more presentable. No, that's just way too shallow. I do mean that maybe you can study a little bit more, because you mentioned that you don't know anything about video production, and therefore you cannot do anything about your boyfriend's work. Maybe you can pick up some online lessons, or you can read a few books. Even if it has nothing to do with video production, you can always find areas of your interest where you can do some further studies. The more you study, the more you fill yourself with more knowledge and expertise, the more attractive you will become. Because guess what? People will always find smart people attractive. True. That's a fact.
Yeah, and again, if you prove that you can be an asset to his operation, I mean, that would be even more, as you mentioned, just more attractive. And if you're able to do the jobs that this person can do, or that he's utilizing her for, then it might be a better switch, if that's something that he wants?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
that's probably another really powerful question as well.
Yeah. And the third actionable tip I would say is communicate openly. I mean, you have to have that conversation with your boyfriend. Let him know that this is bothering you and give him the clear reasons why it is bothering you. It's not so much that he actually does have a work partner. It's the very fact that it's a female and it never even crossed his mind to let you know that this work partner is a female. So you have to let him know that this is bothering you because it's a sign of maybe disrespecting you a little bit. But you have to pay attention to the way you communicate. Like, don't use sarcasm. Like, oh, I see, you're having a colorful time right now. So, tones like that, they never help. So just watch the way you communicate. But do let him know that you are not happy about this and list out the reasons why you're not happy about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have to say that I think that honesty is key here. I mean, if you're going to hang out with, someone from the opposite gender, considering the fact that you're with someone, both parties, I think, should know about it. And if you hide that, it could drive a wedge into the trust in the relationship. And regardless, for whatever reason, I think a huge part of a relationship is trust, especially when you're so far apart. So, this is really, really important. So both people being open and sharing what's going on and not hiding anything. Because if you hide something, then there is this feeling that why didn't he just tell me who this is or whatever? And so that sometimes gives people a reason to think the worst. And so trust is key. And if you have that, then I think that, both people should be good.
Right. And also, some people may argue that, well, if I'm not feeling anything, like I don't have any wicked thoughts about that work partner, why should I just go out of my way to tell you that, okay, so there's nothing going on between us, but I have to let you know that it's a female. This is like courting trouble. But once again, I think empathy is very important. Just try to put yourself in your partner's shoes. If you were her, would you be happy when you suddenly found out that, oh, he actually has a female work partner? If you don't like that feeling, your partner will not like that feeling. So just put yourself in her shoes.
Right. So Viola, I hope this was a little helpful for you. As suggested by Thomas, I think that having other worthwhile relationships is a healthy distraction. It could lead to getting involved in other activities where you focus on other things besides missing your partner. And who knows? I mean, it happens. Sometimes you meet people who may possibly even better suited for you. Doesn't mean you have to act on it very quickly, but sometimes having those connections can certainly add more color to the grayness of long distance relationships. And again, I'm speaking from personal experience. I know what it's like. It is not fun. And it may not be the case for you, but for some people, this can also be a strategy to not put all your eggs in one basket. Again, it's always nice to have connections and people around you because you never really know how things are going to pan out, especially when you have a long distance relationship. So
I definitely understand what you're trying to say. And I just want to make sure that listeners don't get the wrong message. We are certainly not advocating for playing the field. We're just saying don't limit your options when you have more than one option.
Right.
Maybe you can try to explore a little bit and within a reasonable range.
Or at least just have connections around you to bring some color into your life. Because sometimes when you are in love, you tend to focus mainly on one person.
Right.
And so that can be lonely if that person's not around. So if you have some other people in your life, male and female, it makes life a bit more colorful.
Yes. And also, I would like to add one final point, which is, Viola, always remember to be kinder to yourself, because jealousy is a very commonplace feeling, and and everybody feels it to a certain extent sometimes. So just because you're feeling jealous doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Always remember that, and do not beat yourself up.
Absolutely. Well said. So for those who have made it to the end, this wraps us for this episode of Shrinked. And folks, we're actively pursuing more voice contributions for the show. So if there's any of you that'd like to share something or get it off your chest, send us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I hope your day gets a bit brighter after listening in, and be sure to tune in next time for more sessions. I'm Jamal Aziz.
I'm Liu Yan.
Take it easy, folks. We'll see you next time.